The silk cut into Petra's wrists, just enough to remind her she was not in control. Not because it hurt, but because Kang Yi-ho had tied it himself, slowly, deliberately, watching her face the entire time. "Spread it wider," he said calmly. His voice wasn't raised. It never was. "Let me see all of you." Petra inhaled sharply, her back pressing into the cool linen of the bed as the city lights of Seoul burned through the glass walls behind him. 40 floors below, traffic moved like veins of fire. Up here, there was only silence, tension, and the man who ruled half the underworld without ever needing to shout. "This isn't necessary," she said, though her voice betrayed her. Not fear, something worse, trust. Yi-ho stepped closer. The silk at her wrists was not a restraint meant for escape. It was a test. "Nothing in my world is necessary," he replied. "Everything is chosen." His fingers hovered near her chin, not touching. He never rushed touch. Touch was power, and he understood power better than anyone alive. "You could still leave," he added. "Say the word." Petra laughed softly, breathless. "You know I won't." Hey, beautiful souls, before we dive deep into this story, understand this. What you're about to hear is not a love story. It's a choice made under danger. If you enjoy dark, cinematic stories where power, loyalty, and forbidden love collide, subscribe now. Because once this story starts, there's no turning back. That made him pause. For the first time that night, his control cracked, not in anger, but in something far more dangerous. Relief. Because outside that penthouse, men were already dying. The door to the bedroom vibrated faintly as a distant explosion echoed through the city. Petra flinched instinctively. Yi-ho did not. "Your brother?" she asked. "Yes." "You're sure?" "I'm never unsure." He finally touched her then, 2 fingers under her chin, lifting her gaze until she was forced to look at him. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but beneath them lived something restless, raw, and unraveling. "If Kang Seokjin survives tonight," Yi-ho said quietly, "everything changes." Petra swallowed, "And if he does?" "Then I lose the last thing that ever made me human." Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Petra should have been afraid. Any sensible person would have been. She was tied to the bed of the most dangerous man in Seoul while a war unfolded below them. But fear had abandoned her weeks ago, replaced by something far more permanent. "I exposed him," she said. "I don't regret it." "I know." "You're not angry." "I'm terrified," he corrected. That surprised her. "Of what?" "That if I lose him," Yi-ho said, "I'll finally become exactly what everyone thinks I already am." Another explosion rumbled in the distance, closer this time. Petra closed her eyes. "Then don't lose yourself." He leaned in until his forehead rested against hers, their breaths mixing. "You don't get to say things like that and still pretend you're just my assistant." "I stopped pretending weeks ago," she whispered. That was when he kissed her. Not hungry, not desperate, controlled, as if even this moment was something he intended to survive. The world did not explode. Instead, it rewound. 3 months earlier, Petra stood outside Hanul Group's headquarters with numb fingers and a dying phone battery, staring at the glass tower that looked more like a warning than an opportunity. Her visa expired in 11 days. She had slept 3 hours the night before, her mind spiraling through worst-case scenarios, overstaying, deportation, shame. She had not crossed continents to fail quietly. The job listing still felt unreal. Executive assistant. Fluency in Korean and English required. Advanced financial literacy. High discretion. Risk tolerance mandatory. The salary was obscene. Every instinct told her to walk away, but desperation had a voice too, and it spoke louder when rent was overdue. Inside, the building smelled of steel and money. No art, no warmth, just quiet efficiency. She was escorted to the top floor without a word. The office doors opened to reveal Kang Yi-ho standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking down at the city like it belonged to him. He did not turn when she entered. "You're late," he said. "I arrived 5 minutes early." "For everyone else," he replied. "Sit." Petra sat. He finally faced her, eyes sharp, assessing. She recognized the look instantly. Men who had never been told no often wore it. "Oxford," he said. "Forensic accounting. Fluent in Korean, English, Igbo, and conversational French. Your family name was removed from public records in Nigeria after a corruption investigation." Her spine stiffened. "You don't deny it," he observed. "Because it's true." "And yet," Yiho continued, "you applied anyway." "I need the job." "That's not an answer." "I don't need your approval," Petra said evenly. "I need a contract." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, a smile touched his lips. Brief, genuine. "Dangerous," he murmured. "I like that." She met his gaze. "You don't like anything you can control." That was when he decided to hire her. Not because she was qualified, but because she was not afraid. By the end of her first week, Petra realized Hanel Group was not a corporation. It was a front. Shipping manifests disguised weapons. Charitable foundations masked bribes. She saw bloodless violence executed through numbers and silence. And at the center of it all stood Kang Yiho, calm, precise, merciless. Except with her. He brought her food when she forgot to eat, switched languages when she was exhausted, never raised his voice. And slowly, dangerously, she began to matter. The night she discovered the missing millions, she didn't sleep. She checked the numbers again, and again. Only 3 people had access. Herself, Director Han, and Kang Seok-jin. His brother. Petra stared at the screen, heart pounding, knowing that once she spoke, nothing would ever be the same again. She stood, walked to Yiho's office and knocked. When he looked up, she said the words that would burn his world to the ground. "I think your brother is stealing from you." And somewhere in the future, silk tightened around her wrists as Seoul burned. Petra's words didn't echo. They sank. Kang Yiho didn't move at first. He sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, eyes locked on her face as if trying to determine whether she was lying, or whether the universe had finally decided to test him in the only way that still mattered. "Say it again," he said. "I think your brother is stealing from you." Silence. The office around them was too clean, too quiet. Floor-to-ceiling glass, dark wood, no personal photographs. Yiho had built a world where emotion had no visible place to hide. "Leave," he said calmly. Petra didn't move. "I said leave," he repeated, voice still even, but something sharp had entered it. "If I leave now," she said, "you'll bury this, and you'll die because of it." That got his attention. He stood slowly. When he walked around the desk, Petra felt the shift immediately, the room shrinking, the air tightening. He stopped an arm's length away. "You're very brave," he said, "or very stupid." "Neither," Petra replied. "I'm careful. Careful people don't accuse my family. Careful people don't ignore evidence." She stepped closer, pulling her tablet from her bag and holding it out. He didn't take it immediately. "Millions siphoned off over 6 months," she continued. "Port transfers disguised through Busan routes, only 3 access points. Director Han doesn't have the technical reach. I do, but I didn't do it." His jaw tightened. "That leaves Seok-jin," she finished. Yiho took the tablet. His eyes scanned the data with terrifying speed. Petra watched his face, not for anger, but for denial. "It came anyway." "You're wrong," he said. "I wish I were. You don't understand my brother." "I understand numbers," she said, "and numbers don't lie." He handed the tablet back without looking at her. "Get out." This time, she hesitated. "Yiho." The sound of her, using his name, sliced through the room. He turned slowly, eyes dark. "Do not cross that line." "I already did," she said quietly, "the moment I found this." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Petra felt it then, the shift. Something fundamental had cracked open between them. Trust, maybe, or the illusion of safety. "You will give me 48 hours, Yiho said finally. "You will say nothing to anyone, not a word." "And if you're wrong," she asked, "then I'll end it." "End what?" "Everything," he said. "This conversation, this job, you." Her pulse spiked, but she didn't show it. "And if I'm right?" His gaze held hers. "Then my brother dies." Petra left the office on shaking legs. That night, Seoul felt louder. Sirens, laughter, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement. Life went on, ignorant of the fracture lines forming beneath it. Petra sat on her narrow bed, laptop open, eyes burning as she dug deeper. She encrypted files, traced shell accounts, followed digital trails that circled back again and again to Seoul. He wasn't just stealing. He was preparing. By morning, Petra knew this wasn't greed. It was ambition. Seoul was building something parallel, a shadow empire. And worse, some of the money flowed through offshore accounts connected to the Beak Syndicate. Her chest tightened. The Beak Syndicate had slaughtered the Kang brothers, parents years ago. Everyone in the underworld knew that story. It was the reason Yiho ruled the way he did, with distance, with control, with no mercy for betrayal. Petra didn't sleep. When she returned to the office the next day, Yiho looked different, not disheveled, not angry, colder. "Sit," he said. She sat. "Director Han has been suspended," he said, quietly. "And Seoul. I had dinner with him last night." Petra's breath caught, and he laughed. Her stomach dropped. "He said I was becoming paranoid," Yiho continued, "that I no longer trusted blood. And you believed him." "I wanted to." He leaned back, eyes lifting to the ceiling briefly, as if steadying himself. When he looked at her again, something raw flickered there. "Show me everything." Petra did. For hours, they worked side by side in silence broken only by keystrokes and murmured translations. The air between them grew dense, charged with shared focus and something unspoken. He asked precise questions. She answered without hesitation. At one point, she reached for a document at the same time he did. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away immediately. "Careful," he said quietly. "About the files?" she asked. "About everything." She met his gaze. Too late. By the end of the session, the truth lay naked on the screen. There was no denying it. Yiho stood abruptly, turning away. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing controlled but uneven. "My brother is working with my parents' killers," he said flatly. "Yes." "To overthrow me." "Yes." "And you brought this to me knowing what it would cost." Petra swallowed. "I brought it to you because not bringing it would cost more." He turned back to her, eyes blazing now, not with rage, but with something far more volatile. "Why?" he demanded. "Why not leave? Why not take your salary and disappear?" She hesitated only a moment. "Because if I left," she said, "you would die alone." The words hung between them. Yiho closed the distance in 2 strides. Petra's back hit the wall, not roughly, but with purpose. His hand came up beside her head, palm flat against the glass. "You have no idea what you're standing in," he said. "I know exactly," she replied. "I chose it." His breath was warm against her cheek. For a moment, Petra thought he might kiss her. Instead, he rested his forehead against the wall beside her head, eyes closed. "You should hate me," he said quietly, "for pulling you into this." "I don't," she whispered. "That makes you dangerous." "I already was." He laughed then, a short, bitter sound. "God help me." The following days blurred into long nights. Surveillance increased. Messages were intercepted. Men whispered. Petra learned how to read the tension in the building. The way guards stood straighter, the way doors closed more quietly. Yiho began walking her home. Not because she asked. Because he couldn't stop himself. One night, as they stood outside her building, rain falling softly around them, he spoke without looking at her. "If this ends the way I think it will," he said, "there will be blood. I know. You may not survive. I know." He turned then, studying her face as if memorizing it. "If I tell you to run." "I won't," she said. His lips twitched, stubborn. "Honest." He reached out, hesitated, then tucked a strand of wet hair behind her ear. The gesture was intimate enough to steal her breath. "Go inside," he said. She did, and watched from her window as his car disappeared into the rain, knowing the world she had stepped into would never let her go. Somewhere else in the city, Kang Seok-jin smiled at his phone as a transfer completed. The game had begun. The first attempt on Kang Yi-ho's life came quietly. No gunshots, no dramatic explosions, just a delayed shipment rerouted through a port that wasn't supposed to exist on paper, carrying a container marked as medical supplies. Petra found it at 2:14 a.m. She stared at the screen in the dim glow of her apartment, heart thudding as the numbers refused to make sense. The route code was wrong. The manifest had been edited twice, once by someone sloppy, once by someone very careful. She grabbed her phone and called Yi-ho. He answered on the first ring. "You saw it," he said. "Yes." "So did he." "Where are you?" "At the office." "Don't move," she said. "I'm coming." "No." "Yi-ho." "That wasn't a suggestion," he said, voice tightening. "Stay where you are." She ignored him. 20 minutes later, she was in the back seat of his car, rain streaking across the windows, the city a blur of neon and shadows. He didn't look at her as the car pulled away from her building. "You disobeyed me," he said. "You didn't forbid me," she replied. A pause. "Don't do that again." "You don't get to protect me from the truth," she said. "You hired me because I don't look away." He exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. As if something heavy had finally lodged itself beneath his ribs. "That shipment was meant to explode," he said. "Inside my warehouse." "Tonight." "Yes." "Then why didn't it?" "Because I never go where I'm expected." Petra's stomach twisted. "Your brother knows you better than anyone." "That's why he's dangerous." They arrived at the office to find controlled chaos. Guards moved with quiet urgency. Screens glowed with live feeds from ports and warehouses across the city. Yi-ho stepped into command without raising his voice, issuing instructions that rippled outward like shockwaves. Petra stayed close, translating, cross-checking, anticipating. This was the side of him few ever saw, the strategist, not the executioner, the man who ended wars before they began. At dawn, the truth crystallized. Seok-jin wasn't just stealing. He was testing boundaries, probing defenses, measuring his brother's response. "He's not trying to kill you yet," Petra said softly, eyes on the data. "He's trying to see how far he can go." Yi-ho's mouth curved in something like a smile. "Then he's underestimated me." "Or he's daring you," she countered. He turned to her. "You think he wants me to strike first?" "Yes." "And if I do?" "He'll escalate." "A beat, and if I do?" "You become exactly what he wants you to be." The room seemed to shrink around them. Yi-ho dismissed everyone else. When the doors closed, the silence was oppressive. "You're asking me to do nothing," he said. "I'm asking you to choose," Petra replied. "There's a difference." He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing not just her words but her presence, what she represented now. She wasn't just an assistant anymore. She was a variable he couldn't control. "Stay," he said suddenly. "Stay," she echoed. "Here with me, until this is finished." Petra's heart skipped. "You said this building wasn't safe." "It's safer than anywhere else," he said, "and I need you where I can see you." She nodded. "Then I stay." The days that followed were tense. Coiled tight like wire, Petra slept on a couch in an office that overlooked the river. Yiho slept little, if at all. They spoke in clipped sentences, exchanging information, plans, contingency upon contingency. And yet, there were moments. Late one night, Petra caught him staring at an old security photo on his phone. Two boys, barely teenagers, standing stiffly beside a man and woman whose smiles looked forced. "Your parents?" she asked. He nodded. "They taught us never to trust anyone." "And yet," Petra said gently, "you trusted me." He looked up. "That was my first mistake." "And your best one," she replied. He didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. The second attempt came louder. A convoy ambush on the highway, gunfire, smoke. Petra watched the live feed, fingers numb, as Yiho's car swerved, guards responding with ruthless precision. The attack failed, but barely. When Yiho returned, blood spattered across his suit, not his own. Petra didn't think. She crossed the room and pressed her hands against his chest, checking for wounds. He froze. "Are you hurt?" she demanded. "No." "You're sure?" "Yes." She exhaled, the adrenaline crashing through her. Only then did she realize how close they were. Her hands were still on him. His breath brushed her hair. "You shouldn't touch me like that," he said quietly. "Then stop almost dying," she shot back. For a moment, something like laughter flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone. That night, he stood in the doorway of the office where she slept. "If this ends badly," he said, "I will get you out." "And you?" she asked. He didn't answer. "Yiho," she pressed. "I don't get exits," he said. "I get consequences." She sat up, heart pounding. "Then let me choose mine." He stepped closer, stopping just short of the couch. "If you stay," he warned, "you become a target, not a shield, a weapon." "Good," she said. "I've never been fragile." Something shifted in his expression then. Not desire, respect. "Tomorrow," he said, "I invite my brother to dinner." Petra's breath caught. "That's suicide." "No," he corrected. "That's family." "And you want me there?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he won't expect it," Yiho said, "and because I trust your eyes more than my own." The dinner was set for Friday night. Seokjin arrived smiling, dressed impeccably, carrying a bottle of expensive wine. He embraced his brother with practiced warmth, his gaze flicking briefly to Petra, curious, assessing. "And who is this?" Seokjin asked lightly. "My assistant," Yiho replied. Seokjin's smile widened. "Ah, the famous one." Petra met his gaze evenly. "You flatter me." Dinner was served. Conversation flowed, politics, shipping delays, empty pleasantries. Beneath it all, tension coiled. Halfway through the meal, Yiho set his fork down. "Tell me," he said calmly, "how long have you been working with the Beak Syndicate?" The room went still. Seokjin laughed. "Is this a joke?" Yiho slid a folder across the table. "No." Seokjin's smile faltered as he opened it. His eyes skimmed the contents. Then he closed it slowly, expression hardening. "You chose her over me," he said softly. "I chose the truth," Yiho replied. Seokjin's gaze snapped to Petra. "You," he said, "you think you understand our family." "I understand betrayal," Petra said, "and I understand numbers." Seokjin stood abruptly, chair scraping. "You're nothing," he snarled. "A foreigner who thinks she belongs." Petra rose too, heart pounding but voice steady. "I belong where I choose." Seokjin's hand slipped beneath the table. Yiho moved instantly. The knife flashed. Petra didn't think. She stepped between them, arms outstretched. "Stop," she shouted. Time fractured. Seokjin froze, blade inches from her. Yiho's face was thunderous, barely restrained fury burning in his eyes. "Put it down," Yiho commanded. For a moment, it looked like Seokjin might strike anyway. Then slowly, he dropped the knife. Silence fell, heavy and irreversible. The war had crossed into bloodless ground, but not for long. The guards arrived seconds later, weapons raised, eyes flicking between the brothers and the woman standing between them. Yiho lifted one hand. Out. They hesitated. Out, he repeated, voice low and absolute. The room cleared until only 3 people remained. The table was still set, food cooling, wine untouched. Domestic normalcy hanging grotesquely over the wreckage. Seokjin broke the silence first. You've changed, he said, eyes never leaving Petra. You let her stand where she doesn't belong. She belongs where I place her, Yiho replied. Petra felt the weight of both men's gazes on her. She lowered her arms slowly, refusing to retreat. Her pulse was loud in her ears, but she didn't step back. Sit down, Yiho said to his brother. Seokjin laughed under his breath. You think this ends here? No, Yiho said. I think this ends with you telling me everything. Seokjin's smile faded. He sat. For the next 10 minutes, the truth spilled out in measured, poisonous increments. Years of resentment, living in the shadow of a brother who inherited leadership while he was relegated to logistics and favors. The quiet humiliation of being second. You became soft, Seokjin said. Careful, afraid of blood. The Beak Syndicate offered me something you never did, vision. They murdered our parents, Yiho said flatly. They murdered weakness, Seokjin snapped, and you became it. Petra watched Yiho carefully. His face was carved from stone, but she saw the micro-fractures, tightening jaw, the brief shudder of his eyes. You used my grief as leverage, Yiho said. You sold our name to them. I built my own, Seokjin replied. You just didn't see it. The knife lay on the table between them, forgotten but present. This ends tonight, Yiho said. Yes, Seokjin agreed, one way or another. Yiho stood. Petra moved with him, not touching, just close enough to remind him she was there. He looked down at his brother, voice quiet. You leave Korea, he said. Tonight, I'll give you money, passports, a clean start. You never use our name again. You never contact anyone we know. If you return, I won't hesitate. Seokjin's eyes widened, then narrowed. You won't kill me. I won't, Yiho said. Because killing you would finish something in me I'm not ready to lose. Seokjin laughed bitter. She did this to you. Petra stepped forward. No, she said. You did this to yourself. Seokjin looked at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. You think this mercy makes him strong. I think it makes him dangerous in a way you don't understand, she replied. For a long moment, Seokjin said nothing. Then he stood, straightened his jacket, and nodded once. Enjoy your illusion, he said to Yiho. It won't last. He left without another word. The door closed with a soft click. Petra exhaled, knees threatening to give. Yiho caught her elbow, steadying her. His grip lingered a second longer than necessary. You shouldn't have stepped between us, he said quietly. You shouldn't have faced him alone, she replied. They stood there, the echoes of violence fatting into the walls. Outside, the city continued its indifferent pulse. That night, Petra didn't return to her apartment. Yiho insisted. He said it was temporary. He said it was safer. He didn't say he needed her there, but the truth sat between them like a third presence. The penthouse was quieter than she expected. No art, no clutter, a life designed to leave no trace. Petra slept in a guest room, the door closed but unlocked. At 3:27 a.m., she heard footsteps. She sat up, heart racing. The door opened slowly. Yiho stood there, fully dressed, eyes shadowed. I thought you were asleep, she said. I don't sleep, he replied. A beat. Did you need something? He hesitated. I needed to know you were here. She nodded. I am. He turned to leave, then stopped. Thank you, he said. For what? For not letting me become him. The days after were deceptively calm. Petra worked remotely, coordinating with Director Han's replacement, tightening security protocols, dismantling what Seokjin had built. Yiho moved with renewed focus, decisive but restrained. Then the messages started. An unlisted number, a photo of Petra entering a cafe, another of her sleeping profile taken through glass. Petra showed Yiho immediately. His reaction was instantaneous and terrifyingly controlled. "He's closer than he should be," she said. "He's testing me," Yiho replied. "Again. This time, it's me he's aiming at." Yiho's jaw tightened. "That ends tonight." "Not with guns," Petra said quickly. "That's what he wants." He looked at her sharply. "He wants to prove you're predictable," she continued. "Meet him somewhere symbolic, where he expects blood." "And you." "I go with you," she said. "No." "Yes," she insisted. "He needs to see me choose this." They argued quietly but fiercely. In the end, he relented, not because he agreed, but because he trusted her judgment more than his rage. Christmas Eve fell cold and sharp. The warehouse stood abandoned at the edge of the river, rusted doors yawning open like a mouth waiting to swallow secrets. Yiho's men fanned out, weapons concealed. Seokjin arrived with fewer guards than expected. Confidence. Petra stepped forward before Yiho could stop her. "Enough," she called out. Seokjin smiled. "You again." "This doesn't end with him dead," she said. "It ends with you leaving." "And why would I listen to you?" "Because if you kill him," Petra said, "you become nothing but a footnote in his story. If you leave, you get a future." Seokjin laughed. "You think I want peace?" "I think you want recognition," she said. "Build something that doesn't feed on old blood." The wind cut through the space. For a moment, it felt like the world held its breath. Yiho stepped beside Petra. "This is your last offer." Seokjin studied them, really studied them, and something like resignation crept into his eyes. "Fine," he said. "Exile for now." He turned and walked away. 6 months later, the city looked different. Petra stood by the window of the penthouse, the black diamond ring cool against her skin. Yiho came up behind her, resting his chin lightly against her shoulder. "Regret?" he asked. "None," she said. Outside, Seoul glittered dangerous, alive, enduring. And for the first time, so were they. The calm didn't last. Petra learned that quickly. 6 months of relative quiet had trained her nerves to loosen, just a little. The kind of calm that felt earned, not borrowed. The kind that convinced you the worst had already passed. It was a lie. The message arrived at 6:18 a.m., while the city was still half asleep and the penthouse windows reflected only clouds and steel. Unknown number. You chose him, now choose who bleeds. Petra didn't scream. She didn't panic. She simply sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the screen until the meaning settled fully into her bones. Yiho was in the shower. She heard the water running, steady and controlled, just like him. She could have waited. She didn't. She walked into the bathroom and held the phone up. He read the message once. Then again. Then he closed his eyes. "He broke the agreement," Petra said quietly. "Yes." "What does that mean?" Yiho turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and wrapped it around his waist with deliberate calm. "It means he's desperate. And dangerous." "He always was," Yiho said. "The difference is that now he has nothing left to lose." Petra crossed her arms, grounding herself. "Then we stop reacting." He met her gaze. "We end it." "No," she said immediately. "That's what he wants." Yiho's jaw tightened. "He's threatening you." "He's baiting you," she countered. "There's a difference." He stared at her for a long moment, water dripping from his hair to the marble floor. "You think you can still talk him down?" "I think he wants an audience," Petra replied. "And if he doesn't get one, he'll escalate." Silence stretched between them. "You're asking me to gamble with your life," Yiho said finally. "I'm asking you to trust me with it." That landed harder than any argument. Yiho turned away, toweling his hair slowly. "You shouldn't have stayed." Petra stepped closer. "You don't get to say that now." "I dragged you into this world." "You offered me a choice," she said. "I took it." He turned back, eyes dark. Then listen to me carefully. If this goes wrong, you do exactly what I tell you. I always do, she said softly. He almost smiled. The next 3 days unfolded like a chess match played in silence. Petra tracked financial anomalies, tiny ones this time. Payments rooted through cultural foundations, shell accounts disguised as religious donations. Seokjin wasn't moving money for power anymore. He was moving it to survive. He's bleeding resources, Petra said, scrolling through encrypted ledgers. He's cornered. Cornered animals bite, Yiho replied. They also make mistakes. They found the mistake at midnight on the 4th day. A warehouse lease, old, nearly forgotten, still active. Yiho stared at the address. This was our father's. Which means it matters to him, Petra said. Emotionally. And emotionally, Yiho said, he's unstable. They didn't bring an army this time. Just enough men to ensure no one else interfered. Petra insisted on coming. Yiho didn't argue. The warehouse smelled like dust and old oil. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting long shadows across concrete stained by history. Petra's pulse thrummed, but her mind was clear. She had lived in this tension too long to let it own her. Seokjin was already there. He stood near the center of the space, hands in his pockets, posture loose, almost relaxed. Too relaxed. You always were predictable, he said, smiling when he saw them. Yiho stopped 10 feet away. Petra stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder. You sent a message, Yiho said. Say what you want. Seokjin's gaze flicked to Petra. I wanted to see if she'd come. She doesn't need your permission, Yiho replied. No, Seokjin agreed. She needs yours. Petra stepped forward. This ends tonight. Seokjin laughed softly. That's what you said last time. And you walked away, Petra said, which means part of you wanted it to end. Or part of me wanted you to think I did. Yiho shifted slightly, weight adjusting. Petra noticed. He was ready. So why come back, she asked. Why threaten, provoke, stalk? Seokjin's smile faded. Because I built everything in your shadow, he snapped at Yiho. And now I don't even get to be your enemy. You were never my enemy, Yiho said. You were my responsibility. That did it. Seokjin's hand moved fast, too fast. Petra reacted on instinct. She shoved Yiho sideways just as the gunshot echoed, the bullet grazing past where his chest had been a second earlier. Chaos erupted. Guards surged forward. Someone shouted. Yiho turned, fury unleashed. Enough. The word cracked through the space like a whip. Weapons lowered. Seokjin stood frozen, gun dangling uselessly at his side, shock etched across his face. She chose you, he whispered to Petra, even now. Yes, Petra said, voice steady, and I'd choose him again. Yiho stepped forward, gun drawn but not raised. This ends with you leaving, for good. Seokjin laughed bitterly. You won't kill me. No, Yiho agreed. I won't. He nodded once. The guards moved in. Seokjin didn't resist this time. As they dragged him away, his eyes stayed on Petra. You changed him, he said. That's your real crime. Petra met his gaze. No, I revealed him. The doors slammed shut. Silence returned, heavier than before. Yiho turned to her, hands trembling despite his control. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, she said. He reached for her, pulling her into him with a force that stole her breath. Not possessive, protective, desperate. Don't ever do that again, he murmured into her hair. She wrapped her arms around him. I will, if I have to. He exhaled a laugh that sounded dangerously close to breaking. Weeks later, the city settled again. This time, the calm felt real. Petra sat at the long table in the penthouse, contracts spread before her. Legitimate ventures, clean money, new foundations. Yiho watched her from across the room. You're rewriting my empire, he said. We're refining it, she corrected. He smiled. You never wanted to escape. No, she said. I wanted to belong. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, reaching into his pocket. The black diamond caught the light, dark and unmistakable. "Then stay," he said, "as my partner in everything." Petra didn't hesitate. "Yes." Outside, Seoul breathed dangerous, relentless, alive. And for the first time, so was the future. The engagement didn't change the danger. It sharpened it. Petra learned that within days. The ring was barely a week old when the first board member resigned without explanation. 2 days later, a charity front tied to an old laundering route was exposed by a rival paper. Then a quiet meeting request came from a man Petra had never heard of, but whose name made Yi-ho still. "He doesn't make requests," Yi-ho said, staring at the message on his secure phone. "He makes statements." Petra leaned against the desk, arms folded. "Then what's the statement?" "That the old world is watching," he replied, "and it doesn't like change." They didn't speak for a moment. Outside, rain stitched silver lines down the glass. "They'll test us," Petra said, "not with bullets, with pressure." Yi-ho nodded. "They'll go after legitimacy." "And me," she added. He didn't deny it. The meeting was set for a private room in a restaurant that didn't exist on maps and never accepted walk-ins. The owner greeted Yi-ho with a bow that went too low to be respect and too slow to be fear. Petra noticed everything. The man they were meeting arrived alone. Mid-50s, unremarkable face, perfect suit, the kind of man who survived by never being memorable. "You've been busy," the man said, smiling as he poured tea. "Cleaning, rebranding." Yi-ho didn't touch his cup. "Say what you came to say." The man's eyes slid to Petra. "You've brought your weakness." Petra smiled politely. "If I were a weakness, you wouldn't be speaking so carefully." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "I like her," he said to Yi-ho, "which is unfortunate." "Careful," Yi-ho replied. "You're confusing honesty with courage." The man chuckled. "The city runs on habits, you're trying to break them." "Habits become rot," Petra said, "and rot collapses structures." The man studied her, then nodded slowly. "You think like a builder." "I am one," she replied. He turned back to Yi-ho. "Then here's my statement. Keep your reforms quiet. Public legitimacy draws attention. Attention invites knives." "We can handle knives," Yi-ho said. "Yes," the man agreed, "but can she?" Silence stretched. Petra felt Yi-ho's presence beside her, not protective this time, but trusting. It steadied her. "I'm not fragile," she said, "and I don't scare easily." The man smiled thinly. "Everyone scares eventually." When they left, the rain had stopped. The city smelled clean and false. "He was warning us," Petra said as they got into the car. "He was threatening you," Yi-ho corrected. "Same thing," she said. "Different delivery." That night, Petra couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting breaths. Yi-ho lay beside her, one arm heavy across her waist, grounding. He sensed the shift before she spoke. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing this," she replied. "No." "Choosing me." She turned to face him, their foreheads nearly touching. "You didn't ask me to become smaller," she said. "You made room." His jaw tightened. "Room can collapse." "Then we reinforce it," she said. He kissed her hair. "You're fearless." "No," she said softly. "I'm decided." The next test came from an unexpected place. A legal notice. Petra read it twice, then a third time, her pulse steady but sharp. "They're auditing the foundation," she said. Yi-ho frowned. "Which one?" "The one we cleaned first," she replied. "They want donor records from 5 years ago." That foundation never existed 5 years ago. "Exactly," Petra said. "They're fishing." "And if they find?" "They won't," she said, "because I anticipated this." She pulled up a layered archive, clean and precise. Real donations, real names, a paper trail that led nowhere dangerous. Yi-ho stared. "When did you do this?" "Before we announced the reforms," she said. Legitimacy has to be older than the lie. A slow smile spread across his face. You're terrifying. She shrugged, efficient. Weeks passed. Pressure mounted and broke harmlessly against preparation. The city adjusted, reluctantly. Old players watched and waited. Then the call came. From a number Petra recognized instantly. She didn't answer. She handed the phone to Yiho. He listened in silence, expression unreadable, then ended the call. He wants a meeting, Yiho said. Who? The man who trained my brother. Petra's stomach tightened. That's a mistake. Yes, Yiho agreed, which is why we'll decline. The retaliation was immediate. A shipment seized, a rumor planted, a whispered accusation that spread like smoke. Petra watched the news clip in the penthouse, lips pressed thin. They're trying to isolate us. They'll fail, Yiho said. Only if we respond correctly, she replied. Silence will look like guilt. What do you suggest? She took a breath. We speak carefully. They held a press conference the next morning. Petra stood beside Yiho, composed, unflinching. Questions flew. Accusations danced just shy of directness. Yiho answered some. Petra answered others. When a reporter pushed too far, Petra smiled and said, If you're asking whether transparency threatens power, yes, that's the point. The clip went viral. That night, a brick shattered the penthouse window. It landed harmlessly on the rug, wrapped in paper. Petra picked it up. The message was short. Last warning. Yiho's expression darkened. We should leave for a while. Petra shook her head. That gives them control. It keeps you alive, he snapped. She met his gaze. I'm alive because I don't run. They argued, quietly, intensely. Two strategists circling the same fear. In the end, they compromised. Security doubled, movement minimized, no isolation. The next attempt was subtle. A poisoned narrative. An anonymous source claiming Petra was manipulating accounts, lies wrapped in plausibility. Petra countered it within hours, releasing documents that dismantled the claim piece by piece. Stop saving me, Yiho said that night, frustration bleeding through control. I'm not saving you, Petra replied. I'm standing with you. He exhaled slowly. That's worse. Why? Because if you fall, he said, I won't survive it. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. Then don't let me fall. The city tested them one last time. A fire alarm in the night, a false evacuation, men moving where they shouldn't. Petra caught it before it turned lethal. They shut it down quietly. No headlines, no blood. Afterward, they sat together on the floor, backs against the couch, the adrenaline fatting. This never ends, Yiho said. No, Petra agreed, but it changes. He looked at her. How? By choosing each other every time, she said. Not as an escape, as a strategy. He laughed softly. You've turned love into a weapon. She smiled, only because it already was. Outside, Seoul kept breathing. And inside the penthouse, two people who refused to be reduced held the line, together. The city eventually learned their names in a different way. Not whispered, not feared. Recognized. Petra stood on the balcony one quiet evening, the wind lifting her hair as Seoul stretched endlessly below. Lights pulsed, alive and restless, but no longer hostile. Not tonight. She rested her hand over the black diamond ring, feeling its cool certainty ground her. Behind her, Kang Yiho closed the balcony doors softly. They stopped pushing, he said. For now, Petra replied. For now, he agreed. He joined her, standing close without touching. The space between them had long since stopped being about tension. It was about choice. You could have left, he said, voice low. Any time, after the first threat, after my brother, after the brick through the window. Petra smiled faintly. So could you. He turned to her. I didn't want to. She met his gaze. Neither did I. Below them, traffic slowed. Somewhere distant, laughter drifted upward. Ordinary life, fragile, defiant. Yiho exhaled. I spent my whole life believing power meant control, fear, distance. And now, Petra asked. And now I know it also means restraint, he said, and trust. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. He squeezed once, firm, grounding. You didn't save me, he said. You didn't change me. No, Petra replied. You were always capable of this. He watched her, eyes dark but clear. You're the most dangerous thing that ever happened to me. She smiled. Good. They stayed there as the night deepened, neither speaking. No alarms, no threats, just the low hum of a city that had tested them and failed. Somewhere across the ocean, Kang Seokjin lived under another name, building something small and legitimate, watched from a distance, but untouched. Mercy had not destroyed Yiho's empire. It had reshaped it. Weeks later, Petra walked through Hanul Group's headquarters without hesitation. People stepped aside, not out of fear, but respect. She had earned it with precision, composure, and an unshakable refusal to be intimidated. Yiho watched her from his office, pride flickering across his expression. You know, he said later that night, pouring 2 glasses of wine, they'll never stop watching us. Petra took the glass, considering, then let them. And if the old world comes back? She met his gaze, then we meet it together. He raised his glass slightly, to dangerous choices. She clinked hers against it, and the courage to make them. Outside, Seoul burned bright and unapologetic. And inside that light, 2 people stood, no longer hiding, no longer running, having chosen each other not in spite of the danger, but because they understood it. If you believe some love is worth the risk, if you believe power doesn't have to destroy what it touches, share your thoughts in the comments. Then stay, and remember to subscribe. There are more stories where this came from.